with that
Thank you.
right now.
Enjoy.
What if you could prevent it from happening by supercharging your cells?
I was struggling. I was having a lot of distortion, almost a fishbowl effect out of my right eye, and I was having trouble focusing.
The science of nourishing cells based on your specific genetics and biochemistry. Patty had a hysterectomy which impacted her hormone level, but her test also revealed
she had genetic errors which impacted her methylation pathways, and she had really major problems with nutrition. Certain foods that she was eating caused a tremendous amount of inflammation in her body.
Within 3 months, my distortion was easing greatly, and within 6 months, that was completely gone, and my eyesight was crystal clear.
8 months after, that mound is gone, and Patty no longer needs those eye injections or even her glasses.
All right. Hello, everybody. That was quite an introduction. I'm going to pull up my slides and we're going to get into it. And let's turn off our phones. All right. So we're going to talk today about truth, or our version of the truth, about aging, hormones, cells, methylation, and biochemistry. We're going to touch base on all of these various topics, and it's all going to come together for you under the heading of aging, because all of us want one thing, I think, is to be healthy and to feel good, which is what I see in the chats. I get it. We're all in that same boat. So my background is I happen to be a biomedical engineer from way back. And I went to Cornell Medical School and studied ophthalmology at the Duke Eye Center. And I'm one of the pioneers of PRK and LASIK eye surgery. And then about, I would say 15 years ago, I found or bumped into this world of anti-aging medicine. And I was fascinated by it because their goal was to get down to the root cause of disease. And being an engineer, that appealed to me. I liked it. The only problem was there was a lot of biochemistry involved in this type of science, but there was a real need for improving the methods to do this type of care. So I decided about 15 years ago to develop a method that anybody can use, that anybody can publish upon to do this type of care. But to do that, I needed help, and I found that help in the person of Brian Bakke. Brian's a PhD in biochemistry, which is fantastic. He has a master's degree in nutrition from Columbia, and he did his postdoctoral research in something called methylation, which is a really, really hot topic that I'm going to teach you about today. And he and I have been working together for over 10 years. That's a long time. It's a long time. Initially, we tackled migraine. That was our first effort, is to help people with migraine. And it was amazing. We were able to help the untreatable migraine patient. These are people who have 10, 20 migraines a month associated with depression, anxiety, irritable bowel, joint pain, fibromyalgia, and so many other problems, and who are taking multiple medications, narcotics, you name it. And we helped a lot of these people. We had a 94% reduction in their frequency and duration of migraine. And that was pretty exciting. So we wrote that up, and we were quite proud of ourselves. And that work actually allowed us to win an award called the Advancements in Healthcare Award in 2015 for that work. So I think the point to be made here is that what we're going to talk about today is powerful, very, very powerful science. So what happened next is that we decided to focus on another condition. So back in 2020, we decided to focus on macular degeneration. This is macular degeneration, which all of us are at risk for. It's a disease where these spots form in the back of the eye with the aging process, and they can cause blurred vision and ultimately leak and bleed, leading to the need for eye injections. Many of you probably know of somebody that has macular degeneration and may be getting eye injections. And we were able to help these people enormously with the same science and the same approach that we used for migraine. In fact, we were seeing improvement in vision, and you're not supposed to see improvement. Improvement in vision is not supposed to happen in macular degeneration, but we were achieving that, which is extremely exciting and important. Furthermore, we were able to reduce the need for eye injections. So again, I want to make the point that this is powerful science. And don't get confused by the fact that I'm an ophthalmologist, because virtually all doctors need to be doing this type of care. And in fact, a lot of different doctors from different specialties do this. So, you know, I got involved because it made sense to me, and then I found Dr. Bakke, and we did all this work. So now we're going to pivot a little bit, and we're going to talk about how to apply this science to aging. You would have thought maybe we should have started with aging, but we wanted to take care of a blinding disease before we did that. But we're going to talk about the science of aging, not only for the eye, but for the whole body. So this presentation is for people who wish to age gracefully with the best quality of life, the fewest drugs, and the fewest medical problems. And I think that summarizes the chat. When I look through the chat, many people want to achieve that. Am I able to be heard? I see Patricia says I can't hear. Let's do a sound check. Am I being heard?
Yes, doctor. Yes, some people are having some connection issues. Unfortunately, that's your end and not his end.
Patricia kind of worried me there. Yes, everybody can hear.
I do want to let everyone know, if you do have some connection issues, if the audio cuts out, there's the reconnect button on your screen to be able to reconnect.
So
if you are having audio issues, there's a button that says reconnect. You can try that, or just go back to the email and try rejoining.
Got it. Okay, so we're fine. Thank you, everybody, for the feedback. So again, this presentation is for people who just want to have the highest quality of life, to be healthy, because health is so important for happiness. And it's for people who want to look better, feel better, and see better. And we could also add be better, which is a mental state. I think we should add that to this. Look, feel, and see better. And there's no question people look better on these types of programs. There was a person in the chat who asked a question about whether an anti-aging program can help with wrinkles in the skin. The answer is yes. At one of the conferences I went to a long time ago, there was a doctor who said, live long enough to live forever. Well, what did he mean by that? He meant that we live in an age where there's so much scientific advance that if we can live long enough, we can take advantage of the next wave of scientific successes that are coming down the pike. Because as you all know, technology is just moving at light speed to understand disease and treat disease. And so we want to be at the front end of that. So if we can live long enough, we can live longer by taking advantage of new science. This presentation is also for doctors who wish to offer patients something better than the current sick care model driven by patient crisis. What does that mean? It means typically you have a symptom that's problematic. You go to the doctor, it's a crisis, it's a heart attack, it's some significant problem, and then it's treated. This is not, we're not about that. We're about prevention and stopping diseases before they even start. And then also perverse incentives, because there's a lot of money to be made in the world of crisis management when you have that need for hospitalization, or that need for a hip transplant, or that need for heart surgery. So we want to get out of this sick care model. We want to get into a wellness healthcare model that's more prevention oriented, so we can stay away from all the tribulations of getting really sick. So the first idea that I want to teach you today is that you are the patient, but more specifically, the patient is the cell. The aging process is cellular. It involves the cells inside your body. So this whole presentation is really about keeping cells healthy, because cells get sick with time. Something happens to their chromosomes, hormones decline, methylation pathway problems occur, and I'll teach you all this. Something called epigenetics start to change. Biochemistry starts to stop working properly, and the body and the cell is at risk of damage from oxidative stress and inflammation. This is the full catastrophe that occurs with the aging process, and it happens at the cellular level. So we're going to talk a lot about cells, because there's a huge, almost one-to-one connection between cells and disease. This is a very busy slide, but if you look at it a little more carefully, The cells in the bones are responsible for osteoporosis. The cells in the cartilages are responsible for osteoarthritis. The cells that get sick in the skin are responsible for skin aging, wrinkles, reduced elasticity. And there are certain cells in the eye that become sick with macular degeneration. Kidney cells, brain cells, Alzheimer's, it's all about cells. So I want you to get this clear in your mind that we have to make your cells healthy, because when our cells become sick, we become sick. It just depends upon what cells become sick that determines the chronic disease people have, okay? So it's cellular. So let's break this down into more detail. Now, this is a fascinating idea that or fact that I want you to know, and that is that as we age, the tips of our chromosomes start to shorten. They're called telomeres. And every time the cells divide, those telomeres become shorter, shorter, and shorter. And there comes a point where the cells have a much more difficult time to divide. And that's when people start to age prematurely. And there's also increased susceptibility to cancers and other conditions, including immune function. So telomere function is important, telomere length, and there's strategies that can be implemented to slow down the progression of telomere shortening. That's part of the problem that we're dealing with in the aging process. It's like a clock. And then we have hormones. Hormones are critically important in the body. Hormones are super powerful, and they come from cholesterol, which is kind of interesting. Cholesterol is what your body uses to make hormones. One's called pregnenolone, and I'll teach you all this later. Progesterone, estrogens, DHEA, testosterone, and vitamin D. These are all derivatives of cholesterol. So what we think is going on is that when these hormones decline with age, your body starts to overproduce cholesterol in the attempt to make more hormone. Sort of like a natural reaction, right? If you're out of pregnenolone, if you're out of progesterone, out of estrogens, out of these other hormones as well, your body may try to do something about that, and we think what it does is it increases cholesterol levels. So that's an important concept. I'll teach you a lot about hormones today, a lot. Then we have this very complicated biochemical diagram here, which I'm going to blow up in a second, and that has to do with something called methylation. This is something that very few people in the audience are here to learn about today. About 7% said they were interested in methylation. But methylation is really, really important, because methylation is what your body uses to turn on and turn off genes. That's the idea we're going to talk a lot about, this concept of turning on and turning off genes. Methylation is, the methylation process is like making bullets, where the methyl group, or the methyl piece of the puzzle is the bullet, and then there's energy inside the bullet as well, and that's used to fire the bullet into your DNA or fire it into almost 1,000 different places in your biochemistry. And as we get older and older, our methylation capabilities start to fail us, and we run out of bullets. And then now we lose control over our genetics, and our biochemistry doesn't start to work like it was designed to work, and people get sick. It's a big problem. And some of you may have heard of MTHFR. That's a really important gene that produces something called methylfolate. And methylfolate is really important to make those bullets. Got to have methylfolate to make those bullets. And if you have an MTHFR genetic error, then you've got a problem leading to difficulty making those critical bullets to turn on and turn off your genes and be involved in your biochemistry. So we're going to talk a lot about methylation today, because it's really important. It's as important as hormones. And then if you can't turn on and turn off your genes properly, that's a problem. So here's a gene, and it's turned off. It's not turned on. What's going to happen if it's turned off? Something is not going to be produced. That's a problem, because that's going to affect your biochemistry. The way to understand that is dominoes. Biochemistry is like a cascading of dominoes, one domino converting to another, to another, to another. But if you're missing a domino, then this biochemical pathway won't work properly, and that's going to cause disease. So you want to keep your biochemistry working properly. That's so important, because biochemistry is life. If you've got great biochemistry, you're going to have a healthy body. And we have to achieve that and not allow your biochemistry to falter. And the reason epigenetics is so important is because your biochemistry comes from your epigenetics. You have 30,000 genes. And if those genes are not properly turned on and turned off, you're not going to produce the pieces and parts of your biochemistry that you need to have normal function. And if that happens, the cells in your body become sicker, and then they become susceptible to oxidative stress and inflammation. So this is the battleground here. This is what we're trying to fight against if we're going to fight aging. So studies have been done. I want to just point out to you that there's this sentence here: functional studies in model organisms and humans indicate that epigenetic changes have a huge influence on the aging process. In fact, they're now looking at epigenetics as a better way to estimate how old you are. Now, you think you might be 65 years of age because you've been on Earth for 65 years, but they're saying that looking at your epigenetics can be more accurate in terms of assessing what your age really is. So this idea that I'm conveying to you about epigenetics is really important. And this paper talks about the reversal of epigenetic changes, and they're saying that this is an idea that may actually be a way to create anti-aging. In other words, if we can turn on your good genes and turn off your bad genes like they were back when you were 20, 30, 40 years of age, then arguably you're younger. Very interesting. So epigenetics is important. And why is that? Because your epigenetics produces your biochemistry. And your biochemistry is you. You are your biochemistry. Now, I told you earlier, we live in a time where there's so much information available. It's absolutely amazing. We actually know what genes are turned off or turned down with aging. It's amazing. We know this. There are some really important genes that matter. One of them is called TERT. This is a gene that helps support the health of those telomeres. So you want to keep that gene turned on so that we can slow down the shortening of your telomeres and your chromosomes. That's a really cool fact, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? We know that. It's called TERT. There's another really important gene, which I like a lot, called P53. That's a tumor suppressor gene. It plays a crucial role in regulating cell growth and preventing the development of cancer. So that's an important gene. You don't want that gene turned off. If the gene is turned on, it can help prevent cancer by detecting DNA damage. Isn't that important? Like, to get a cancer, this is an important idea. To get a cancer, your DNA has to become damaged. And if your DNA in a cell is damaged, we have to get rid of that cell. We got to kill it, because otherwise it'll become a cancer. Well, P53 does that. It triggers cell cycle arrest, or apoptosis. Apoptosis is a special way of saying, a suicidal cell. Kill the cell. If you have an abnormal cell, we have to get rid of it. And P53 is one of those genes that does that. But if that gene is downregulated, if it's turned off, then you're going to be at a greater risk of cancer. That's a problem. And this one's another good one here, NRF2. That's a very interesting gene that regulates antioxidation and protects against oxidative stress. This gene is related to macular degeneration. So this idea that we know what genes are turned off, and that is important. And what's even more important and more exciting is that we can actually turn these genes back on by using nutraceuticals and hormones. You've heard of BRCA, BRCA1, BRCA2. Those are tumor suppressor genes. So if a woman has a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation, then she's not able to suppress breast cancer as easily. That's why you may have heard of BRCA1, BRCA2. Sirtuins are very interesting as well. They're involved in DNA repair. So isn't this amazing? We actually know what genes shut down with aging, and the beauty now is that we can actually do something about it. We can actually turn these genes back on, and that's important. So as I mentioned, Dr. Bakke and I developed a method of anti-aging medicine, and we show it in this diagram here. It basically reverses the aging process shown here. We provide hormones which are deficient, so we take care of hormonal decline. We take care of methylation, that really important piece of biochemistry I told you about. We use nutrition and nutraceuticals to help turn these genes back on. And by turning genes back on, the cell can fight off damage like inflammatory damage or oxidative damage. And if there are genes that are problematic, those genes can be actually turned off. So this is the strategy. And the key to doing this strategies to do all of this simultaneously based on blood work. That's what we do. We do blood work, we check hormones, we check methylation, and we put together a care plan of nutraceuticals, hormones, and nutrition. This is the method. So here's a quick list of all these genes again, and you can see that this curcumin matters, quercetin matters, caloric restriction matters, magnesium, vitamin D. There's a lot of connectivity, resveratrol, curcumin, between these genes. So what Dr. Bakke helps us with so brilliantly is he has an encyclopedic knowledge of nutraceuticals and their effects on biochemistry. So we pick and choose amongst the nutraceuticals that are available based upon a patient's history and blood work to turn these genes back on, is the way to think about this. So nutraceuticals are definitely part of the solution to the aging problem. But as I told you, it's not enough. You can't just do one thing. You can't just solve this complicated puzzle here just with one of these things. Sometimes we use the analogy of a car with 4 flat tires and no gas and no oil. And this car is sitting at the edge of the highway. It wants to get back on the highway, but it can't get back on the highway until you fix all 4 flat tires and give it gas and give it oil. And if you do that, then that's when you get the results that's what we learned in the migraine patients and the macular degeneration patients that we treated. You have to go after the entire process. So every time you turn on the internet and read things, there's always somebody talking about the wonders of one thing. Oh, try this, try that. It's great. It's fantastic. You can't solve a complex problem with one thing. That's like putting air in one tire of a car with 4 flat tires. And now we're going to walk into this incredibly powerful world of hormones. I mean, nutraceuticals and nutrition are powerful, no question about it, no disagreement. But hormones are super powerful. They're way more powerful. Those are hormones: pregnenolone, DHEA, testosterone, growth hormones, estrogens, vitamin D. These are all hormones that have a tremendous effect on cell behavior. They actually go into the cell and turn on genes. It's an epigenetic strategy. That's how hormones work. They work at the epigenetic level. So the name of the game for anti-aging is to restore hormone levels to an optimal, that's the key word, physiologic range to alleviate symptoms of hormone deficiency and imbalance. A lot of you feel miserable because you're in a state of hormonal decline and or methylation decline as well. But we'll talk about that later. But the point is, a hormonal decline is one of the reasons you're here today listening to this presentation, because you don't want to feel miserable. And hormone deficiency will make you feel miserable. If you balance hormone levels, you can improve cell function and support healthy aging. All we're trying to do is bring your physiology back to where it was when you were younger. When you think about it, how old did people live in the past, generally speaking? Back in the old days, what's the old days? 100, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 200,000 years ago. How old did people? How far did people get in life? And the answer is they only got up to about 35 or 40 years of age, and then they died. We're not equipped to live from 35 or 40, to the ages we're living right now. We just don't have enough hormones in our backpack to keep us nourished. So that's one of the strategies of anti-aging, is to optimize hormonal levels. And by doing that, you can reduce inflammation, support immune function, promote cellular repair. And now you know why. It's because it can turn on those genes I told you about earlier, and also can help reduce the risk of developing autoimmune diseases and cancer. Hormones matter. Hormones are cool. So let's talk about each of the hormones that matter. One of them is called pregnenolone. Maybe some of you have heard of pregnenolone, maybe not. But it's a hormone. It's made from cholesterol. It's the first hormone made from cholesterol. And it converts into other hormones as well, like testosterone, estrogens, and cortisol, and DHEA. But pregnenolone is really good for cognitive function. Pregnenolone has been shown to improve your memory, your brain function, learning, attention, concentration. I took pregnenolone before giving this presentation today. So, I'm using my own strategies as well to help myself with my own cognitive function. It has an antidepressant effect as well. It's good for mood. It's a brain hormone. A lot of people call pregnenolone a neurosteroid. It's a neurosteroid. It's a fancy way of saying a hormone that benefits the brain. It's good for energy and vitality. As I said, it can convert to other hormones. It's good for brain. That's why it's neuroprotective. And it also can benefit skin health. So pregnenolone is one of the winners here. And we want to know what your pregnenolone level is. So we measure pregnenolone levels and then make a determination as to how much to give you. DHEA, very important hormone, very interesting hormone. Some people even think of it as the aging hormone because over time, your DHEA levels decline. And there's nothing good about that. The DHEA levels decline with age. So it's important to supplement DHEA, again, to improve overall health, mood, cognition, energy, vitality. It's a hormone that helps build muscle. It builds you up. If you're out of DHEA, your body breaks down, your muscles break down. Your body's in a constant state of breaking down and building up. When you were a child, you were building yourself up. You were building bone, building muscle, and becoming who you are. When you were in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you were maintaining. You were building up and breaking down, building up and breaking down. And then when you get older, all of a sudden you don't have the stimulus necessary to build yourself back up again. So then you start to deteriorate. And it's directly related to hormonal deficiency. Sexual function is benefited by DHEA, and body composition may help improve body composition by increasing muscle mass. See, that's that idea of building up, increasing muscle mass, and reducing body fat. So DHEA is valuable. Now, you need to do it correctly. You need to measure how much you have, and you need to give the right amount. You don't want to give too much DHEA. That can certainly cause a few side effects like acne and things like that. So you just have to know what you're doing when you work with these hormones. It's not hard, but it's definitely doable. Testosterone, the story behind testosterone is fascinating because for a long time, men were told that testosterone would somehow increase their risk of prostate problems, and that just turned out not to be true. So there's a lot of men who have testosterone deficiency, and that's really unfortunate because it results in lower energy, mood issues, muscle mass loss, increases in body fat, bone density issues, libido issues, cognitive function. Testosterone is important, and it's important to know what your testosterone levels are so that you don't suffer from the deficiencies of testosterone. That's the aging problem. So this is something that's neglected. Very few doctors really care what your testosterone levels are, which really amazes me. Just totally amazes me. So testosterone is part of the solution. It's one of those four flat tires, so to speak, that needs to be looked at. And now we're treading into that area of controversy and drama, which has to do with women's progesterone and estrogen. It's a very controversial area. I'm going to tackle it and get you through it. So let's talk about progesterone. Progesterone is a wonderful hormone. Bottom line, it helps relieve menopausal symptoms. It is very valuable for protecting the endometrium because it counters the effects of estrogen in the body. You see, progesterone is the opposite of estrogen. So it's very, very important for that purpose. We'll talk more about that. It improves sleep quality, mood, bone health, cardiovascular disease health as well. Now, a lot of times doctors will say, which makes no sense to me, I've just told you it helps sleep, mood, bone health, and heart. But so for some reason, which really baffles me, doctors will tell patients who have lost their uterus, you don't have a uterus anymore, you don't need progesterone. They seem to think that progesterone is only valuable for the uterus. So if you don't have a uterus, you don't need progesterone. And that makes no sense. It just makes no sense at all. Progesterone is a hormone that benefits the entire body. All of these hormones benefit the entire body, which is fascinating. Testosterone benefits the entire body. DHEA benefits the entire body. Pregnenolone benefits the entire body. When God made us, this is how he did it. He just gave us hormones that benefit and choreograph and orchestrate what happens in the entire body. And so you need to know that. And progesterone is unique in that it's the reverse of estrogen. Now, progesterone, we're getting closer and closer to the area of debate. and confusion, and that has to do with breast tissue. Now, estrogens stimulate the growth of breast tissue, and progesterone fights against the growth of breast tissue. It's anti-proliferative. Estrogens are proliferative. They cause growth. So they counterbalance the effects of estrogen. And by doing that, I think it's logical that it helps reduce the risks of breast cancer. This is an important concept. This one's a very big one. I introduced it earlier. We'll say it again. Progesterone is valuable because it helps cause apoptosis. We talked about that, remember? That's that process of programmed cell death. If there's an abnormal cell in the breast, for example, progesterone can induce apoptosis in breast cancer cells, thereby preventing excessive cell growth and reducing the risk of breast cancer development. That's important. So estrogens might be stimulatory to the breast, and if by being stimulatory, if they were to create an abnormal cell, you've got progesterone there to cause that cell to die. And that's kind of cool. It's amazing how the system works. There's more to this story. We're going to get into it in more detail. But the point is progesterone is good for the breast. It inhibits new blood vessel growth, and new blood vessel growth is involved in cancer. So you want to have progesterone in your body. And it can also downregulate other growth factors as well that promote cell growth and proliferation. I never forget a woman who had breast lumps for a long time. She had breast lumps, and we put her on progesterone, and those breast lumps just disappeared. They just melted away, and that's because of progesterone's anti-proliferative effect. Plus, it helps with sleep, it helps with bone, it helps with heart, it helps keep your blood flowing, it helps fight against blood clots. It's a very important hormone. And what's so sickening, actually, is that what happened to women back about 20 years ago or so, where they created a drug to replace progesterone, and that caused havoc in this country with regard to women's health. And we're going to get to that in a second. But first, before we get to that study that I just alluded to, let's talk about estrogens. Estrogens are great. They relieve menopausal symptoms, and a lot of people who have low estrogens may have hot flashes, night sweats, and mood swings, and that's a problem. If estrogens are low, there'll be problems with vaginal health, and that's a problem. Vaginal dryness, itching, and discomfort is resolved with estrogens. Bone health is improved with estrogens. That's important. Sleep quality is improved. Improved mood and cognitive function. And as you'll see in a little bit, fighting against diseases like Alzheimer's can be benefited by estrogens, and cardiovascular health. So there's so many benefits to estrogen. So what happened? What went wrong? Why was estrogen demonized? We have to get into that. Well, the idea came out that for some reason estrogens, may cause breast cancer, but no one believes that. There's no proof that estrogens cause breast cancer, but some people think there's a relationship between estrogens and breast cancer. But there are many factors that influence breast cancer risk. We're going to go into those in a moment. So one of the problems that exist is that for some reason estrogens are accused of being the problem. And in reality, that might not be true, because a study was done which showed that estrogens actually lowered the risk of breast cancer by 23%. I want to talk to you about that study. So this study was done about 20 years ago, and it was a huge study. It was called the Women's Health Initiative Study. It involved 160,000 women in this age bracket. And they looked at those patients who only received estrogen, the estrogen alone trial. And they found that estrogen therapy alone even without progesterone, was associated with a reduced risk of breast cancer. In this trial, the women who received estrogen had a 23% lower risk of developing breast cancer compared to those who received placebo. This finding was unexpected. Yeah, I don't care that it was unexpected. It's a finding in a huge study of 160,000 women. This is a really important number, because it says, as previous observational studies had suggested, that estrogen therapy might increase the risk of breast cancer. Well, forget those previous observational studies. Kick them out the door. You got a 23% reduction in cancer in 160,000 women in the estrogen alone trial. I mean, that's an important piece of information. Now, what happened was there was another arm to the study, and that's the estrogen plus progestin. Now, you've never heard of this word, progestin. This is the drug that they created to replace progesterone. This is the crime that was committed. It was a horrible situation. Instead of giving women progesterone with all of its wonderful beneficial effects that I just taught you, they did not do that. They created a drug, patented it, and they gave it a name. They called it progestin, and they combined that with estrogen. And it turned out that progestin had many effects that were opposite to progesterone. It actually was also stimulatory to the breast. And so they started to see that in people who had estrogen and progestin, there was an increased risk of breast cancer. And so now common sense would have been to say, okay, this is crazy. Let's get rid of this progestin and hook estrogens up with progesterone, because we know that progesterone is good and healthy. Then that wasn't done. Instead of that, they decided to demonize estrogens, and they told women to stay away from hormones. And I think that's really unbelievable. But it's true. This 23% number is real, it's important, and it's something you should know about. So why 23%? Now, here we are 20 years later. Let's go get into the science of it. Why did estrogens have an anti-cancerous effect, right? Well, it turns out that some of the genes that I showed you earlier, like the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, those are tumor suppressor genes. Well, the good news is estrogens are reported to turn on the expression of those genes. And these genes play a role in DNA repair and maintaining gene stability. So if you're taking, maybe the reason that the estrogens reduce the risk of breast cancer is because the estrogens were turning on BRCA1 and BRCA2. Remember P53? I taught you about that. That was that really cool gene that is involved in suppressing tumors. Well, it turns out that estrogens also activate P53. So maybe that's why, maybe the combination of estrogens turning on BRCA1, BRCA2, and P53 is why there was a 23% reduction. Here's another gene called PTEN that also is involved in tumor suppression. And it turns out estrogens can also regulate the expression of that. So there's real hardcore science as to why estrogens may actually have anti-cancerous properties. There's another one called the sirtuins. Estrogens also upregulate those genes which were involved in DNA repair. Remember I taught you that DNA repair is important? Like if you have a cell that's got something wrong with its DNA, you have to kill that cell or fix the DNA. And estrogens actually do that. So when I looked at this information here, I said to myself, why are we worried about estrogens? I don't get it. That doesn't make sense. So if we're not going to worry about estrogens, what else can we worry about? Because breast cancer is a significant problem in today's world. And which, if you want to worry about something else, worry about low vitamin D levels, because that's rampant. Lots of people have low vitamin D. And if you have low vitamin D, you're not going to have the anti-cancer properties associated with vitamin D. And again, there's that word apoptosis again. You need vitamin D. It's important. Oh, and what about progesterone? If you're low in progesterone, now you're losing those benefits as well. That I would worry about not having enough progesterone in my body to protect against abnormal cells, because we want to get rid of those abnormal cells. DHEA is also valuable in terms of being anti-cancerous, and everybody has low DHEA. So women are walking around today with low vitamin D, low progesterone, low DHEA, and they're developing breast cancer. Maybe that's why they're developing breast cancer. They also have low estrogens too, and they're still developing breast cancer. So it's not as if people are even taking estrogens and getting breast cancer. They're not taking estrogens, they're not taking vitamin D, progesterone, DHEA, and they have problems with methylation. Now remember I told you about that. That's that bullet idea, the idea that a cell has to turn on its good genes and turn off its bad genes. It's really, really important. Methylation, we talked about MTHFR. Methylation is super important. Virtually every cancer in the body that you get, whether it's brain, bone, lung, skin, you name it, virtually all cancers have problems related to methylation. Because if you have abnormal methylation, that can turn off cancer-fighting genes. Isn't that incredible? This is why I love methylation. Dr. Bakke did his PhD, a postdoctoral research in methylation. It's absolutely fascinating that the body has this machinery biochemically to turn on and turn off genes. So if you're not turning on and turning off genes, you're at risk of developing a whole slew of diseases, not just cancer, a ton of them. So methylation can help maintain a stable genome, which means your DNA, preventing mutations. Methylation affects genes related to immunity, and on and on and on. Methylation is a critical role. So if you want to worry about cancer, then take care of your vitamin D, progesterone, DHEA, and methylation, and start to wonder if taking estrogens might actually benefit you. Given all of this, it can be argued that women are at greater risk of breast cancer without anti-aging medicine, as for the same reasons I just stated. If you don't have estrogen, if you don't have DHEA, if you don't have progesterone, then you're going to lose all the anti-cancerous benefits, because your BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes will be shut down, your tumor suppressor genes will be shut down, and on top of that, you're walking around with low vitamin D, no methylation support, no nutraceuticals, and other nutraceuticals that can further reduce the risk of cancer. And the reason I find this such a fascinating subject is because when we do our method, we just don't see people develop breast cancer. We're not seeing it. It just, so Dr. Bakke and I, when we think about our results, we say, are we preventing breast cancer? Maybe. We're certainly not causing it. So this is the minefield, the confusion, because all of you have been told by doctors, oh, don't take estrogens, they're bad for you, they're going to cause cancer. It's like, well, really, seriously, given all this science, is that believable? Is that really believable? And that's the position. Now, here's the hardest subject matter that I stress with, and that's those of you who have had breast cancer. What do you do then? Because if you've had breast cancer, some of the breast cancers out there are hormone receptor positive, which means that theoretically, if you give estrogens to that person, and if they're estrogen receptor positive, then in theory, the estrogen will stimulate the breast cancer. See, there's a huge difference between developing breast cancer and having breast cancer. Okay, so what do you do if you've had breast cancer? How do you think about this? It's so complicated. Well, why would you go on estrogens if you've had breast cancer? Well, hopefully you're hormone receptor negative, which means that if there are any residual cells hiding in your body somewhere, they're not going to be stimulated by estrogen. Now, another reason to consider trying hormones is if you have severe menopausal symptoms. You might be so miserably sick that you just, are willing to take the theoretical risk. Hopefully, you had early stage low risk breast cancer. So if you had breast cancer and your stage 0 was very low, and it's been over 5 years since having breast cancer, that arguably would be a way to think that might be reasonable to proceed with hormones. It's a real problem because it's so confusing, and I think if you have had breast cancer, hopefully it's been over 5 years, because if it's over 5 years, the risk of developing breast cancer is very, very low. It's not zero, can't be zero, but still, if you had an early stage breast cancer, and if it's been 5 years and you're miserable and you're trying to feel better and hopefully you're hormone receptor negative, then these are reasons why one might consider allowing you to go on an estrogen. Even your oncologist might agree, and you should ask them too. Don't take it all from me. Talk to your oncologist, because if you feel sick, if it's been a long time, if it was early stage, your quality of life matters, and if you're miserable, this is how you think about it. Another strategy too is not to even give estrogens, because some of the other hormones that we can give people some of those can convert to low levels of estrogen. So we can solve the estrogen deficiencies by giving things like DHEA. So we don't even have to be too aggressive with estrogens. So this is a special case. You know, we debated not even accepting any patients who have a history of breast cancer, because it's just too much drama, the medical legal problems associated with it. What if you did develop breast cancer? Now what do we do? You know, you got doctors who are against it. It's a real minefield, but I thought I'd have to at least address the subject. I thought it was fair. But again, having had breast cancer is light years different from a conversation we just had about the development of breast cancer. You did not develop your breast cancer because of estrogens. You developed your breast cancer because your tumor suppressor genes were turned off and they weren't attacking the cancer cells. So that hopefully that made sense to you. That was pretty intense and complicated, but there are people in the audience who are in this category. Okay, and regarding number 3, other medical conditions, you know, the idea to not take estrogens is significant because, you know, you look April 3rd, 2023, early menopause, later start to hormone therapy may increase the risk of Alzheimer's. I mean, there are consequences to not being on hormones. Your quality of life is not what you want it to be, and that's horrible. And there are other serious illnesses that can result, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, and the like. Now let's take a dive, just for the fun of it, into the world of Alzheimer's. See, we live in a world where we can actually study and ask the question, what genes are turned off that lead to Alzheimer's? And here they are. And now you can see them. You've seen these before. SIRT1, this one is there, NRF2. Now look here. Look at estrogens actually turn these genes back on. So we actually know what genes can lead to Alzheimer's, and look at that, estrogens can actually turn those genes back on. So that's why this article makes perfect sense. Early menopause, i.e. low estrogens, may increase the risk of Alzheimer's. That's right, because if your estrogens are low, these genes will turn off, and then that increases the risk of Alzheimer's. Isn't that fascinating? Isn't it amazing that you can actually take diseases down to the genetic level, the epigenetic level, and see correlations between nutraceuticals and genetics and disease? That's at the cellular level. That's what this presentation is about. That's what excites me about this. Now, I want to teach you something. Not everything is hormonal. Like we just talked to a number of people, and some of them are already on hormones, but they still felt poorly. And there's a reason for that. It's because not everything is hormonal. A lot of people have problems with methylation. So if you have problems with methylation, when your hormones start to decline in your 40s, that combination of hormonal decline and methylation problems sort of conspire together to make your cells extra sick, which leads to a lot of illnesses, especially autoimmune diseases. So this is an important concept. So that's why you can't just fix everything with hormones alone. You've got to fix methylation. You got to, you do everything you can with nutraceuticals and hormones to turn on the good genes in the cells to get those cells working better. So we can turn on the good genes, turn off the bad genes, and fix the biochemistry. But this idea of, for those of you who got sick, maybe MS occurred, all right, just something went wrong at around 40, 45, 50. Yeah, I think it's a combination of these two factors, which is really worth your time today to learn that from me. So again, our goal is to turn on the good genes, turn off the bad genes, fix the biochemistry, and try to do that in as many cells in the body as possible to fight against many of the diseases that occur with the aging process. And so what Dr. Baki and I came up with was this idea here of reversing the problems leading to aging. Hormones decline, fix that. Methylation declines, fix that. Use good nutraceuticals and nutrition, fix that. Turn on the good genes, turn off the bad genes, help the cells fight oxidative stress and inflammation, turn off bad genes. And all that together is what helps turn on these genes to help improve health. That's how I see this issue of aging. And not just the world sees it that way. The whole world is now moving in the direction of epigenetics as the bottom line of the aging process. So you don't want to allow these important genes to turn off. And by doing that, if we can just give you the best biochemistry possible by optimizing your biochemistry, we can get away from the sick care model, which is reactive. Because if you're walking around with low hormones and you're not eating right and your genes are turning off, something's going to break. And then when it breaks, then you're in the healthcare system getting admitted into the hospital with and getting put on multiple medications and the like. That's reactive medicine. We want to avoid that. And also, this makes sense. Everything I told you today makes sense. It's really cool, isn't it? No one's ever explained this to you that way. The current way of doing things today is just, trust me, you have depression, take this antidepressant. How does it work? Well, don't worry about it. It just works. And then it doesn't work. And you got to switch antidepressants. Or you have high cholesterol, take this drug. Why am I taking this drug? What is it doing to my body? Why do I have liver problems and muscle aches and pains from the side effects of statins, which many of you are probably on? So I think of this type of an approach as the first line of defense against disease. We're not against drugs, but don't do drugs first. Why would you want to do drugs first? You want to take care of your physiology and biochemistry first. You want to turn on your good genes first, because one could conceptualize turning on those good genes as a way to unleash the God-given power that you have within you to be healthy, because that's what it takes to be healthy. Turn on your good genes, turn off your bad genes. And if you've got bad DNA, get rid of those cells that are sick. It's how your body was designed. So we're trying to get the body to work literally as it was designed to work. That's what this presentation was about today. So boy, oh boy, did you learn a lot today. That's a lot of information.
That was a lot of information, Doctor. Thank you so much for going through that. There are a lot of medical questions coming in. We're going to get to them very quickly. Doctor, I think you have a question for them, though.
I do have a question, and that is we are, Dr. Bakke and I, what we do is we help people optimize their biochemistry by figuring out what hormones they need, what nutraceuticals they need. We coach them on nutritional strategies to help them become healthy. We have a program. It's an advanced wellness program. If you would like to learn more about our advanced wellness program, please press 1 in the chat. And any feedback too would be appreciated as well. Did you understand what I said today? Did you follow me? I tried my best to make it as clear as possible. That was pretty heavy duty science that you learned from me today.
It was, and that I think we're going to get into the live Q&A, but if you want to hear how you can work directly with Dr. Rouzakis, press 1. We are going to quickly go over that, and then we are going to move over to the live Q&A, and wow, we're just seeing a lot of people. Thank you for your responses. So we are going to quickly go over that because this is exciting, right? This is what you've been looking for, the providers that you've been looking for, and the doctors who are actually doing this type of work. So we're going to quickly dive into that, and then we're going to get into the question and answer session. Wow, we were just seeing a lot of people come and pressing 1. So thank you so much. I know it's exciting with regarding to everything.
All right. There we go. I had like one of those filters on, so I apologize for that. But I see everybody's responses coming in. So let's start and really go over what the program is, kind of really the modality of how you can work with Dr. Rouzakis and Dr. Bakke. This is a really exciting time, right? With what we're doing and how we're doing it, you learned a lot tonight. It's like everything got thrown at you, but we are here to help distill this down for it to make sense for you. And, if you want to learn exactly how you can work directly with Dr. Rouzakis, with Dr. Bakke to optimize your health, for your hormones, for your epigenetics, for your methylation, for your body's biochemistry, stay tuned because in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about how it works. So the first stage is getting your medical history, getting you to the lab that is covered by your insurance. The labs are covered by insurance, not the provider fee, and then getting you your optimized program. That's really the state of how we do our process. It's getting your history, getting you tested, and getting you on the right program. And that's why we created Optimize. You know, it's a really exciting time for Optimize. We have been doing this for a very long time. And it's something earlier this year when we had so many requests of people coming in, you know, they really wanted to get their hormones managed by Dr. Rozakis. So you're probably asking yourself, big question, right? How much is the program? Well, usually our public pricing right now is $3,800 for 1 year of cell resuscitation. But because we are doing it via telemedicine, it is not $3,800. We want to be able to sure we can help you. So it's $3,000 for 1 year. You're going to start with your candidacy clearance call via $250 refundable deposit. And you're probably asking me, Colin, why do I have to pay to talk to you? And it wasn't you, it was everybody else behind you that when we did free calls, they did not show up. They did not fill out their medical history. So, you know, we asked you to respect the doctor's time by putting a $250 refundable deposit down for your candidacy clearance call. It's a call really designed to be able to make sure that we're able to help you, because there are some people who may not be a qualified individual for Optimize. Dr. Rozakis will be going through that here in just a few minutes. It's a doctor-reviewed phone call. There's a lot of variables. This is not just one disease that we're here to help you with. Dr. Rozakis is a fully board-certified medical doctor throughout many states in the entire U.S., and with that being said, he has to be able to make sure that he's able to take you on medically. So you can just see some examples of what he replies to in the patient portal, you know, with letting people know that they're either a candidate or they're not. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with that $250 refundable deposit. It's refundable for any reason, no questions asked. If you decide you don't want to do it, whatever it is, that $250 is fully refundable for any single reason if you decide not to move forward with the program. The link to book the call is in the chat right now. Our times always book up. It is by the end of this webinar, we're going to be fully booked. It happens every single time that we go live. So take the opportunity right now. If you're like, I really need Thursday at 3 p.m. or I really need like a Friday evening slot, secure that time, because the only way that you can secure that time is by putting the refundable deposit down. So what's included in Optimize? What is the year of care? Your integrated Optimize program includes a user-friendly telemedicine portal. It is not MyChart. It is not one of those clunky, cluttered systems that like you log in and it's like, whoa, I have no clue what to do here. It's very simple. That's why we have the very user-friendly telemedicine portal that Dr. Rozakis has personally designed. You also get your Nutravine, your high-quality supplements as a third-party provider discount. We are not in the business of being in the business of supplements. So we work with a third-party company to help source our supplements for you. You get unlimited access with Dr. Baki, who is a PhD in biochemistry, for 1 year. You get your 3 lab analysis, one at the beginning, middle, and end of the year to make sure you are on the right track for your optimized program, as well as unlimited program adjustments. And you're getting that 15 plus years of clinical experience between Dr. Baki, who is our PhD, and Dr. Rozakis, who is our board certified medical doctor throughout many states here in the United States. And you're saving money on all the unnecessary extra testing that your doctors are doing. They're trying to guess and they're not getting the answers for you. You're getting the bioidentical hormone experts. You're getting that clarity on what you need specifically for your body, as well as the clarity for the nutraceuticals by the world-leading experts of Dr. Baki and Dr. Rozakis, as well as our nutritional toolkit. You have unlimited access through the doctors for the entire year. People ask us all the time. I know some people probably want to take a screenshot right now. I saw some people in the chat doing some screenshots of the slides. Take a screenshot, write this down really quickly. what does Optimize include for the 3,000? This is what it includes. So I'm going to leave this up for about 20 or 30 more seconds to make sure that everybody has the ability to get this written down. All right. I still see some people writing down here. All right. All right. The link to book your call is in the chat. The labs can be covered by insurance. I just want to make that aware. It just depends on your insurance. So the link to book your call for the $250 refundable deposit is in the chat. If you have any questions, I'm going to leave this slide up. You can give us a call. Madonna, April, Kathleen, Candy, all of us are here available to take calls if you have any